Okay, so you're probably drowning in information, right? Always trying to get a real handle on something important. Maybe it's prepping for a big meeting or finally trying to understand a field you need to know about, or maybe just scratching that curiosity itch without getting totally lost online.
Yeah, that feeling of overload is real. You want to be properly informed, but like efficiently.
Exactly. So welcome to the deep dive. Think of us as, I guess, your shortcut, helping you understand what really matters in a whole stack of sources.
And today we are diving deep into, well, deep work. This idea comes primarily from the book Deep Work, Rules for Focused Success. And look, this isn't just, trying to concentrate a bit harder with your phone buzzing next to you.
Right, not just regular focus.
No, no. We're talking about a state of like total distraction-free concentration, focusing on tasks that really push your brain,
The hard stuff.
the hard stuff. And this kind of effort, this is what creates genuinely new value. It improves your actual skills, and it's really, really hard for someone else to just copy.
Okay, so we've basically boiled down the key arguments, the research, the examples from the book to give you the essentials.
Yep.
Our mission today is twofold, really. First, we want to show you why deep work is almost like a superpower in today's, crazy information world.
It really is valuable.
And second, to give you some actual strategies, practical things you can use to weave deep work into your own life so you can achieve more of the important stuff without feeling pulled in 10 directions at once.
Sounds good. Let's do it.
All right. So where do we start? Why is deep work so critical now?
Well, the book makes a really strong argument that our economy has shifted, right? From manufacturing, think assembly lines, to information. And with that shift, the ability to truly focus, like without distractions, has become way more important for way more people.
Okay, that makes sense. Like factory work often involved repetition, maybe didn't always need intense, sustained focus in the same way.
Exactly. But for knowledge workers today, deep work is it's becoming a key currency, even if companies and maybe even we ourselves don't fully recognize it yet.
It's like you can skim 100 articles, but deep work is about truly understanding one complex report, seeing the implications.
Precisely. And the book links deep work directly to two crucial abilities for thriving today: learning hard things quickly and producing work at an elite level. Quality and quantity, in a way.
So those are the foundations for success now.
That's the argument. The book actually points to three groups likely to do well. High-skilled workers, superstars in whatever field, and, well, owners of capital. And deep work is presented as pretty essential for those first two groups.
Right, because skills alone aren't enough. You need to actually produce something with those skills.
You got it. Having the skill is step one. But you need to translate that into tangible, valuable results. Think about like a coder. They need the skills, but also the focus to write clean, complex code without errors.
And this isn't just about being naturally gifted, is it? The book talks about deliberate practice.
Yes. Deliberate practice is key for mastery, and the core of deliberate practice. It demands that intense, focused attention. You have to be fully present to identify weaknesses and actually integrate feedback effectively.
So it requires deep work.
Fundamentally, yes. The book even gets into a bit of the neuroscience. It talks about myelin.
Oh, yeah.
Yeah, it's this fatty sheath around nerve fibers, acts like insulation on a wire, basically makes brain signals travel faster, cleaner. And the book says to be great at something is to be well myelinated.
Huh. And you build that myelin through focused practice.
That's the idea. Consistent, focused effort strengthens those pathways. It physically changes your brain to support the skill.
Wow. Okay, then there's this other concept, attention residue. What's that about?
Yeah, that's fascinating. It's the idea that even when you switch tasks, like sequentially, not multitasking at the exact same second, but switching.
Like checking email, then going back to writing?
Exactly that. Even when you switch back, part of your attention, a residue, stays stuck on the email. So your performance on the writing task is actually impaired. It's not as good as it would be if you hadn't switched.
So even quick checks hurt your focus significantly.
They do. It fragments your attention, even if you don't feel it in the moment. And that just highlights why deep, uninterrupted work sessions are so valuable for producing really high-quality output.
Okay, so if deep work is so obviously valuable, why is it so rare? That seems like a paradox.
It really is a paradox, and the book points fingers at several trends in like modern business culture that actively work against deep concentration.
Like what?
Well, the most obvious one is probably the open office plan.
Ugh.
Right. It's often sold as promoting collaboration, serendipity, all that.
But mostly it promotes noise and distraction.
Pretty much. The book gives examples like Facebook and Square, big companies embracing it, but the reality for focus is often, well, terrible. Constant visual distraction, noise, interruptions. It's the opposite of an environment for deep thought.
Like trying to write a novel in a train station.
Exactly. And it's not just physical spaces. Think about the pressure, especially for people who create things, writers, thinkers, to be constantly on social media.
Oh yeah, they need to have a presence.
hmm This constant push to tweet, post, engage, it just shreds attention. It pulls you away from the sustained concentration needed for the actual work. The book contrasts someone like Jonathan Franzen, who famously avoids Twitter,
Thank.
with George Packer, another great writer who also intentionally limits that stuff and wrote an award-winning book during a period of focus.
So why do these distracting things persist if they're so bad for focus?
Well, the book introduces something called the principle of least resistance. The idea is, in business especially, when it's not immediately crystal clear how different behaviors impact the bottom line.
Which is often the case in knowledge work.
Right. We tend to default to whatever is easiest or most visible in the moment. And quickly firing off an email or checking notifications feels easy. It gives you that little hit of, I did something.
Even if that something is shallow and pulls you away from the harder, deeper task.
Exactly. It's a path of least resistance in the short term, even if it has long-term costs in terms of real productivity.
The book even tried to quantify that cost, didn't it? Yeah. Something about emails.
Yeah, it mentioned Atlantic media spending, like over $1 million a year just on the time employees spent processing email. That's a hidden cost of shallow communication.
Wow. And it links this to the difficulty of measuring knowledge work productivity too, right? It's not like fixing a car engine where the result is obvious.
Precisely. With complex projects, progress is often ambiguous day to day, so there's a tendency to default to visible busyness. Answering emails quickly, being in meetings, it looks productive.
Even if it's just churning through shallow tasks instead of making real progress on the deep stuff.
You got it. And layered on top of all that is what the book calls the cult of the internet. This kind of background assumption that anything online, any new tool or platform is inherently good or necessary.
Like, you have to be on Slack, you have to check email constantly, you have to be on social media.
Right. Even if those things actively sabotage your ability to do the focused work that actually matters most, it makes it really hard to push back and carve out that deep work time.
Okay, so we're getting a clear picture. Deep work is super valuable, but our modern work culture often pushes us towards shallow, fragmented attention instead. But the book argues it's not just about productivity or economics, right? There's a deeper, more human reason to pursue this.
Absolutely. It really digs into the philosophical and psychological benefits, how deep work can actually lead to a more meaningful and satisfying working life.
How so?
Well, it mentions Winifred Gallagher and her realization about living a focused life, how directing your attention intentionally towards valuable things brings its own kind of deep satisfaction.
Okay.
And this connects really neatly with this psychological concept of flow, that state where you're totally immersed in something challenging but doable, time disappears and you feel great doing it.
Right. Mihaly Csikszentmihalyi's work.
Exactly. Deep work, the book argues, is a fantastic way to regularly access that flow state. And that brings profound satisfaction that you just don't get from juggling emails.
And there's a philosophical angle, too. Something about shining things.
Yeah, drawing from Dreyfus and Kelly's book, All Things Shining. The idea is that we can rediscover a sense of meaning, maybe even something sacred, through skilled engagement with the world, including our work.
So it's not just what you do, but how you do it. The skill and attention you bring.
Precisely. It connects to the idea of craftsmanship. Whether you're like a master carpenter or a brilliant programmer, the meaning comes from the skill, the care, the deep understanding involved in the work itself.
Like the quote about seeing cathedrals even when cutting stone.
That's the one. It's about bringing that level of intention and focus to your work, whatever it is.
And there's another interesting point about how intense focus can almost protect you from negativity.
Yeah, the idea that deep concentration can hijack your attention apparatus. Basically, when you're fully absorbed in a meaningful, challenging task, your brain doesn't have the bandwidth to dwell on all the little annoyances or worries that might normally pop up.
So the focus itself crowds out the negative mental chatter.
To a large extent, yes. Which enhances the sense of meaning and satisfaction you get from the work itself. It makes the work feel richer, more valuable.
Okay, this is compelling stuff. Valuable, rare, and fulfilling. So how do we actually do it? How do we cultivate deep work?
Right, the practicalities. The book spends a lot of time on strategies. It starts by suggesting you need a philosophy, like an overall approach to how you'll integrate deep work. It outlines four main ones.
For options. Okay.
First is the monastic philosophy. This is pretty extreme. It involves basically eliminating or radically minimizing shallow obligations. Think of someone like sci-fi author Neil Stephenson, who famously just doesn't do email so he can focus purely on writing.
Wow. Okay, probably not feasible for most people.
Probably not. So second is the bimodal approach. This is about dividing your time clearly. You have long, dedicated stretches purely for deep work, maybe days or weeks at a time, and then other periods where you're more open and available for shallow stuff.
Like Carl Jung retreating to his tower. Or Adam Grant focusing research in one semester and teaching collaborating in another.
Exactly those examples. You alternate modes.
Okay, what's next?
Third is the rhythmic philosophy. This is probably more accessible for many. It's about creating a regular, consistent habit of deep work. Like setting aside the first 90 minutes of every single workday for your most important task, no exceptions. Making it a rhythm.
Like a chain you don't want to break.
Precisely. And the fourth is the journalistic philosophy. This one requires a lot of discipline. It's about fitting deep work into any unexpected pockets of time that open up in your schedule. Like a journalist on deadline grabbing 20 minutes here, an hour there, whenever they can. Walter Isaacson apparently wrote biographies this way.
Okay, so monastic, bimodal, rhythmic, journalistic. The key is picking one that actually works for your life and job, right?
Yeah, absolutely crucial. There's no single best way. It depends entirely on your circumstances.
And beyond the big philosophy, there are rituals.
Yes, rituals are super important. It's about creating structure around your deep work sessions, deciding where you'll work, for how long, what the rules are, like no internet, and what support you need, like telling people not to interrupt.
Like J.K. Rowling checking into a hotel to finish Harry Potter. That's a ritual.
A perfect example. Or William Shockley, co-inventor of the transistor, doing intense work sessions in hotel rooms, creating that defined space and time signals to your brain. Now it's time for deep focus.
And sometimes you need a bigger gesture. Grand gestures.
Yeah, sometimes making a significant change can really cement the commitment.
Yeah.
Building a dedicated writing shed like Michael Pollan or a Young's Tower again, it's a physical manifestation of the importance you're placing on deep work.
But what about collaboration? So much work involves teams now. Does deep work mean becoming a hermit?
Good question. The book suggests a more nuanced approach, like a hub and spoke model.
Hub and spoke.
Yeah, you have hubs, maybe meetings, shared spaces, online forums where you get exposure to ideas, collaborate, brainstorm. But then you retreat to your spoke, your private space, to do the deep, focused thinking and work required to actually develop those ideas.
So collaboration for input, solitude for deep processing.
Kind of. It even mentions how at MIT, despite a very collaborative culture, professors often value having soundproofed offices. They recognize the need for that individual focused work alongside the collaboration.
Okay, that makes sense. So we've got philosophies, rituals, maybe even grand gestures. How do we actually execute day to day?
Right implementation. The book brings in a framework from the business world called the 4 Disciplines of Execution, or 4DX, and applies it to personal deep work.
40x for deep work. Interesting. What are the disciplines?
Okay, first, focus on the wildly important. This means identifying just 1 or 2 really ambitious, high-impact goals that require deep work. Don't try to do everything.
Okay, focus your deep efforts. What's second?
Second, act on the lead measures. Instead of tracking the outcome, like finish the project, track the behavior that leads to the outcome specifically, the hours spent in a state of deep work. That's your lead measure.
So focus on the process. The time invested in deep focus, not just the end result. That seems powerful.
Third, keep a compelling scoreboard. Make your progress visible. Track those deep work hours somewhere you can easily see them. It provides motivation and keeps the goal top of mind, like a simple tally on a whiteboard.
Visual feedback loop. And the fourth discipline.
Fourth, create a cadence of accountability. Regularly review your scoreboard, maybe weekly. Ask yourself, how did I do? What can I adjust for next week? It creates a cycle of performance and improvement.
So it's applying business-like rigor to managing your own focus.
Exactly. Treating your deep work goals as seriously as you treat a major work project.
Now, all this focus sounds intense. What about burnout? Does the book talk about rest?
Oh, absolutely. Rest is presented as crucial, not optional. It talks about the idleness paradox, the idea that periods of doing nothing, or at least doing non-work things, are actually essential for high-level thinking.
How does that work?
Downtime lets your unconscious mind work on problems. You know how sometimes the solution just pops into your head when you're showering or walking? That's your unconscious connecting dots while your conscious mind rests.
Right.
Plus, it mentions attention restoration theory, RT. This suggests that spending time in nature, away from directed attention fatigue, actually restores your ability to concentrate later. Studies show walks in nature improve focus compared to walks in urban environments.
So nature walks are actually good for your work productivity.
Weirdly, yes. And the book reminds us that intense cognitive work is draining. Even experts can usually only manage like 1 to 4 hours of true deep work per day. You need to recharge.
So pushing for 8 hours of deep work is probably counterproductive.
Definitely. Quality over quantity. And related to rest, it strongly recommends a strict shutdown ritual at the end of the workday.
Shutdown ritual.
Yeah. A consistent routine to consciously finish work tasks, plan the next day, and then explicitly say, I am done with work. This helps you fully disengage, preventing work thoughts from intruding on your downtime and allowing proper mental recovery. Based on research showing that making a plan helps release the mental load.
Consider it done. Okay, so rest is vital. What about actually improving the ability to focus? Is it like a muscle?
Very much so. The book emphasizes that concentration is a skill you can train. It uses an example of someone learning Talmud study, which requires intense analytical focus, and how that discipline strengthened their general ability to concentrate.
Okay, so you can train your brain. But the flip side is also true, right? Constant distraction weakens it.
Exactly. It mentions Clifford Nass's research showing that chronic multitaskers are actually worse at filtering out irrelevant information and worse at switching tasks efficiently. Their brains get wired for distraction.
So just taking an occasional digital detox isn't enough to fix a distracted brain.
Probably not. The book argues you need consistent practice in focusing. One strategy is scheduling your internet use. Plan specific blocks when you go online and strictly avoid it outside those times.
So you're exercising the delay gratification muscle for online stimuli.
Pretty much. Building attentional resistance. It even suggests using small moments of boredom waiting in line, commuting not as opportunities to pull out your phone, but as concentration calisthenics. Just resist the urge, be present.
Interesting. And productive meditation.
Yeah, that's about using periods of physical activity where your mind is relatively free, like walking or jogging, to focus your thoughts intensely on a specific professional problem, mulling it over, structuring it, looking for solutions, all while moving.
So leveraging downtime for focused thought, what about that memorization stuff, like memorizing cards? How did that help?
Right. It suggests memory training, like using techniques like the memory palace to memorize a shuffled deck of cards, not because memorizing cards is inherently useful for most jobs,
Right.
but because the process requires intense focus and structured attention. It's like lifting weights for your concentration muscles. It builds general cognitive control.
Okay, so train the focus muscle, give it rest. Now, the final piece seems to be actively fighting against the constant barrage of distractions, especially digital ones.
Yes, a big part of the book is about managing the environment and the tools. It challenges the default assumption that you need to be on every platform, constantly connected to be successful or even socially acceptable.
It critiques the any benefit approach to tools, right?
Exactly. That's the mindset where if you can imagine any possible benefit to using a tool, however small, you adopt it. Like, well, someone might contact me on this platform, so I need to be on it.
But that ignores all the downsides, the distraction, the time suck.
Precisely. It ignores the opportunity cost and the negative impact on deep work. Instead, the book advocates for a craftsman approach.
Craftsman approach.
Think like a skilled woodworker choosing a new tool. They'd ask, does this tool significantly and positively impact the core process of creating high-quality work? Do the benefits clearly outweigh the negatives? If not, they don't adopt it, no matter how trendy it is.
So be much more critical and intentional about the digital tools you allow into your life. Focus on the core value.
Exactly. Apply the Pareto principle, the 80-20 rule, or the law of the vital few, as the book calls it. Identify the 20% of online activities or tools that deliver 80% of the real value for your goals, and be ruthless about cutting out the rest.
Like those writers mentioned earlier, Gladwell, Lewis, Packer, who limit social media because it doesn't serve their core goal of deep writing.
That's the idea. And for people unsure about the value of certain tools, like social media, it suggests a drastic experiment, a social media packing party, which a 30-day cold turkey break from all optional social media. No checking, no posting. After 30 days, ask yourself honestly, was my life or work significantly worse off without it? Did anyone really miss my presence? Often the book suggests the answer is no, which gives you perspective to quit or drastically reduce usage.
A reality check. Okay, and it also talks about structuring leisure time, not just work time.
Yes, a structured plan for leisure. Don't just collapse into passive consumption after work. Intentionally plan fulfilling activities for your evenings and weekends. Hobbies, exercise, quality time with people. This ensures you actually recharge effectively rather than just frittering away downtime. It references Arnold Bennett's day within a day idea, claiming your non-work hours for real living.
Makes sense. Recharge properly to work deeply, and fixed schedule productivity.
This is about combating the culture of endless work. Set a firm quitting time each day, say 5:30 p.m., and stick to it. Then work backward from that deadline. Knowing you have a fixed container forces you to prioritize recklessly, minimize shallow tasks, and maximize intensity during work hours.
Use the deadline to force focus. Love that. And finally, taming the inbox.
Oh yeah, big topic. Using things like sender filters, basically, making it slightly harder for people to send you casual emails, forcing them to consider if it's really necessary.
And being more efficient in how you handle email.
Right, like do more work when you send or reply. Instead of quick back and forths, make your emails more comprehensive, proposing next steps, anticipating questions to resolve the issue in fewer messages.
Reducing the overall volume.
Exactly. And crucially, don't respond if an email is ambiguous, irrelevant, or doesn't require your specific input. Not every message deserves an answer. Reclaim your time and attention.
Okay, wow. That's a lot of practical stuff packed in there.
It really is. It provides a whole toolkit.
So let's try to wrap this deep dive up. We've seen why deep work is increasingly valuable, but also increasingly rare in our distracted world.
And why it's not just about productivity, but also about finding meaning and satisfaction in what you do.
We've looked at different philosophies for integrating it, from going full monastic to snatching journalistic moments, and a whole bunch of strategies, rituals, grand gestures, the 40X framework.
The crucial role of rest and downtime, training your concentration like a muscle, and actively fighting back against the tide of digital distraction by being intentional with your tools and time.
And for you, listening right now, taking these ideas seriously isn't just about, ticking more boxes on your to-do list. It's really about developing mastery in your field.
Yeah, producing work that truly stands out, work that has impact.
And ultimately building a professional life that feels more focused, more productive, and honestly more meaningful. Getting that real understanding without the constant feeling of being overwhelmed.
Absolutely.
So here's maybe a final thought to leave you with. What's just one shallow activity, just one, that you could consciously cut back on or eliminate this week, even for a short time? What could you do with that reclaimed space to try even a brief session of deep, focused work?
Yeah, just imagine the potential. Imagine the kind of stunning originality, as the book puts it, you might uncover if you started building your own little mental version of that bowling tower, even if it's just finding a quiet corner and committing to an hour of real focus. What could you create?